Shirley was born June 1st, 1947. As was the culture at the time, she was surrounded by extended family in her local community. Being raised in the South, she was taught that the ultimate goal for any young woman was to find a husband and raise a family. Late in her teenage years, she achieved that goal, and at the age of 19, she was married and gave birth to her first child, a girl. Then, 20 days after her 21st birthday, she was giving birth to her second child, this time by C-section. For years, she, like many women, suffered from painful and problematic cycles, hers complicated by scarring from the C-section. In 1987, she underwent a hysterectomy to put an end to the monthly pain. The results of the surgery were a mixed bag. While she no longer suffered due to hormonal changes, there were complications she was not aware of and not prepared to handle. Painful adhesions leading to small bowel obstructions. Between 1987 and 1995, Shirley underwent multiple exploratory surgeries to remove adhesions, each one leaving behind more scar tissue and adhesions, requiring more interventions. In addition to the surgeries, Shirley was also admitted to the hospital 2 to 3 times a year for a week or two at a time when her small bowels would obstruct. Through chronic pain, Shirley continued to seek medical attention in between life's greatest events. She had developed a team of physicians, one for each side effect of her treatments or medications, opioids for the pain, which would decrease the motility in her bowels, which would lead to medication, treatment, or diet changes to combat malnourishment, which would lead to obstructions in pain and opioids, and back to the beginning. While admitted, she would have to undergo torture under the name of treatment, iron infusions, multiple IV starts, vitals and x-rays at all hours of the night leading to sleep deprivation, rude and sometimes mean staff, hospital-induced infections, multiple practitioners who never stopped long enough to see her until, while admitted for a small bowel obstruction in May of 2002, she agreed to a surgery that was supposed to line her intestines to prevent adhesions and future obstructions. During this stay, she developed infections in her surgical site, so the surgeons sought help from the radiology team to treat and resolve. During the following months, Shirley was brought down weekly from her room to the interventional radiology department to have her drainage tube checked and or replaced as she continued her fight against the abscesses and infections developed during surgery, in addition to the new infections arising from her prior IR procedures. In late August of 2002, the infection had spread beyond control and she went into septic shock. On September 18, 2002, Shirley lost her fight. Shirley is my mom, and she is still missed every day. And here's the saddest part. All of the healthcare workers who cared for Mom were knowledgeable and professional. And while not all of them were nice, they were all competent at their jobs. However, of the hundreds of healthcare workers she came in contact with, only a handful took the time to connect with her and her family. Only a handful allowed her to have a say in her care. Only a handful allowed her to have a voice. Only a handful showed her compassion. How many are remembered 15 years later? Only a handful. So I ask, do you really care? I have no conflicts to disclaim. This presentation is designed to share ideas on redefining 1. How we care for our patients, 2. How we feel about our careers, and ultimately 3. How our patients feel about us. It is intended for your education and your entertainment only. Throughout the presentation there will be quotes followed by thoughts to ponder. Why did I do this? It is my hope that you are both encouraged and challenged by this talk and that you will carry the conversation beyond these walls. I started my career in radiology in 1987. I've trained in CT, MR, interventional radiology, and diagnostic imaging. I spent over 4 years in Siemens MR applications. Currently, I am a director of advanced imaging in Seattle, which oversees CT, MR, nuclear medicine, and PET. I'm also the adjunct instructor of advanced MRI at Bellevue College. I could talk all day about MRI, physics, technology, etc. But at this point in my career, I am most passionate about leaving my profession better than I found it. I selected this topic because this is where I feel there is the most room for us to grow. Throughout the talk, while I hope to keep your professional radiology brain engaged, it is my desire to connect to your heart and adjust the filter through which you see your work and your patients. So let's take some time to discuss why you should care. Aristotle once said that it is the mark of an educated man to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. I would like you to ponder this. When presented with an idea that is contrary to who you are and what you believe, do you shut down, get angry, or can you listen with an ear to understand? Who is the most important person in a restaurant? Is it the chef and their food? The courtesy of the waitstaff? Is it the efficiency of the bussers keeping the place clean and keeping a fast throughput? What about a retail store? Is it the manager making sure everyone is performing as expected? Is it the buyer ensuring only the most chic merchandise is sold? Or is it the friendliness and helpfulness of the cashiers? Actually, the most important person in all of these businesses is the same: the customer. Without the money the customer is spending, neither of these businesses will survive. Why does the patient experience matter? On September 1st, 2017, Google pulled up around 150,000 news stories when I searched patient satisfaction. Google then pulled up around 2 million news stories when I searched patient engagement. And then Google pulled up over 3.9 million news stories when I searched the patient experience. What factors influence a patient's choice of a hospital? Well, location, reputation, provider's choice, and the patient experience. Location only impacts the decision 18% of the time. Reputation only impacts the decision 20% of the time. The recommendation by their provider only impacts the decision 21% of the time. And the patient experience impacts the decision 41% of the time. There are a lot of ideas about what needs to change in healthcare and radiology. Lawrence N. Tannenbaum, Vice President and Medical Director of the East Region for RadNet, which is one of the largest chain of imaging centers in the United States, recently spoke at the Association for Medical Imaging Management, also known as the AHRA, annual meeting, and summarized their approach to improving the patient experience is to focus on decreasing imaging time and increasing their efficiency. He's probably spot on for the busy patient that needs to be in and out. But what about the person who is paying $2,000 or more for their exam? Should they feel rushed in and out? I honestly don't know the answer. The ACR defines the dimensions for patient-centered care as respect for patients' values, preferences, and expressed needs, coordination and integration of care, communication, information, and education, physical comfort, emotional support, and involvement of family and friends. The ACR is focused on quality and writes that by improving quality, the patient experience can be improved by respect for patients' values, preferences, and expressed needs is improved through the use of appropriateness criteria. The coordination and integration of care is improved by improving access and decreasing wait times. Communication, information, and education is improved through timely and accurate reports. Physical comfort is improved by cleanliness and ambient noise changes. Emotional support is improved by managing expectations. And involvement of family and friends is improved through pre- and post-procedure instructions. While I believe that all of these are great initiatives, I believe they will only scratch the surface of improving the patient experience. So why improve the patient experience? For consumerism? For collaboration? For compassion? For a connection? Yes, 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 and yes. These are all reasons why this topic is so important. Consumerism is the new frontier of healthcare reimbursements, where Medicare will scale payments based on outcomes and patient feedback. Collaboration is critical in reducing the defects that have plagued healthcare since its inception. If we can stop fighting for the patient's dollars and instead fight for the patient's health, we will all be better. Compassion and connection are vital components to all human interaction. Remove them from a relationship and it will wither and die. The information in these charts came from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The first chart shows the average annual discretionary income in America, that is the money we have left over after taxes and living expenses. The second chart reflects the average annual healthcare expense of the same age groups. Between the ages of 25 and 64, 14 to 20% of our discretionary income is spent on healthcare. Then at age 65, the percent of our discretionary income that is spent on healthcare climbs to 42%. And by 75, that number jumps again to a staggering 64%. I ask, what value are we giving them in return? Audrey Hepburn said it best when she said, people, even more than things, have to be restored, renewed, revived, reclaimed, and redeemed. Never throw out anyone. So true. So let me ask you this. In an effort to perform as quickly and uniformly as possible, do you throw out your patients? Well, actions speak louder than words. If an MRI tech can run a scan quietly, but chooses not to, what is that saying to the patient? If an RT forces the patient into a position that causes pain in an attempt to get an image, what is that saying to the patient? If a radiologist, from the safety of a read room, requests views, images, etc., that has a negative impact on the patient, what does that say? Or if a clinician orders a test that is unsafe for their patient, for example, ordering an MRI when they have a pacemaker, ordering IV contrast when they have a contrast allergy, etc., what is that saying to the patient? If a vendor builds a piece of equipment that is cold and hard, knowing that someone's going to lay on it in a thin gown, what is that saying to the patient? How about if your hours of operation still reflect that of a bank, and or your wait times exceed that of a retail store? What is that saying to the patient? Robert Kennedy said that others have seen what is and asked why. I have seen what could be and asked why not. While he may have been talking about space exploration, the challenge applies to any difficult undertaking. When you return to work, look around and ask this. If I could redesign my department, what would it look like? Then, look at what your vision is and ask, what can I take from that idea and apply it to my day-to-day work? So far, we have covered some reasons why we should show that we care. Let's look at some ways to show that we care. The struggle with any change in regulations, standards, or even new ideas can be trying to make them fit into a space designed and built in another era. This is usually what happens. You keep beating away at the squares until they are either all broken or no longer look like squares. Usually the plans and desired outcomes are delivered from on high by groups that are removed from the work. However, since you are in fact spending your patients' hard-earned dollars, sometimes millions of them, don't you think you should at least let their feedback guide the decisions? Let's take a look at the process of repurposing a space from the ideas up with the patient and regulations and standards in mind. This was the hallway heading into the MRI space prior to a new 3T MRI project. Notice the makeshift MRI safety zones on the floors. This was my lame attempt to meet the current standards in MRI safety. The hallway entering the space from the other side. This is entering Zone 3 with the doorway into a CT and the MRI control room straight ahead. Notice that there is nothing that actually meets safety standards, and worse, there is nothing that makes the space inviting. This is looking back from the CT door. The entrance to the existing MRI is to the right. The patient holding is to the left. This is that holding space that was used by interventional radiology prior to their new suites, and it had been adapted to suit MRI needs. Both inpatients and outpatients used the same area while waiting for MRI exams. Not too cozy. While starting a project with only one idea is fine, the thoughts and ideas of many is powerful, especially since we usually have no clue what our own blind spots are. While you will never have 100% agreement in any endeavor that involves multiple people, it doesn't mean they won't have value to add to the process. The steps you should take to ensure that your final outcomes are ideal are 1. Meet with key stakeholders. These are your front-end users, your techs, radiologists, referring providers. Meet with your supporters. These would be your RNs, housekeepers, and transporters. And of course, meet with your customers, your patients. You want to list your core values, your attributes. You want to mock up the design and use it. You want to fix anything that does not align with your core. Then you'll go get more buy-in, obtain a consensus. So when you meet with the key stakeholders, ask them this question. If you closed your eyes and imagined the ideal space, what would you see? Again, you're going to begin by asking the people that use the space day in and day out, the techs. Then cast a wider net by asking the supporting teams, the radiologists, the primary clinicians, the nurses. Use their input to create an initial list of attributes, or what are the most important characteristics of the new space are. Then use that list and talk to the patients that have used the prior space multiple times in your facility and ask them what they would want to see changed. Where the two lists match will be your primary attributes, which will then guide all your future decisions in the build-out. This is an example from a 3T project. The list of attributes needed to be in the final project, and then under each object list, ideas of what that could look like. You can flex on the ideas, but stay true to the attributes. From the attributes list, the design team can create some rough ideas and plans that will meet all the attributes, and at times inform you that something may have to give in order to meet the attributes, in our case like a hallway. Then, once an initial design is agreed upon, whenever, wherever possible, take your ideas for a test drive. Spend some time in the mock-up simulating the work and the experience. If you can't build a mock-up, use the floor plan and game pieces to evaluate the design. This is a mock-up video of our MRI space. The control room, everything was built out in a empty floor that we had with plywood that we've used in other build-outs. They even built out the MRI machine so the MRI techs, nurses could come into the space and move things around. All of the plugs and outlet locations were all selected by the staff. Let's see how they did. The MRI space is used by both outpatients and inpatients and has been designed in a way that separates these two populations as each have unique needs. In addition, the inpatient area was designed to look, feel, and function the same as a room in the hospital for a faster and safer response during emergencies. Along the wall of the family space are outlets with USB ports for personal device charging, and they are encouraged to access their social media while in our area. A large monitor located opposite of them displays the same images selected by their loved one, so they can experience the exam together. Throughout the entire space, artwork by a local artist and x-ray tech displaying radiographs of flower are proudly hung. The prep area is designed with the look and feel of a hotel lobby. There is nothing medical on the walls, and patients may wait for their exams in recliners featuring heat and massage settings. As the patient relaxes, they will receive an iPad to scroll through Caring Suite images and themes, select their room color, or even update their status on Facebook. The color of the floor, cabinets, and accent walls are designed to calm patient fears when the MRI door opens. The back wall feature matches the front of the MRI machine color to create an illusion of the MRI system disappearing. Use of dark wood on the floor and walls gives the room a larger feel. The cabinets are designed to store everything that is needed inside the MRI space, so the patient sees only a clean environment absent of all clutter. Above the MRI table, mounted to the ceiling, is a 70-inch 4K TV, Bose speakers throughout the room, and another 40-inch monitor on wheels provide in-bore viewing. Lighting and scenes are pre-selected by the patient for color, brightness, the images and music to make the patient most comfortable. In addition to 19 different themes, the system can also play the patient's own music, movies, or family photos. After noise, the second most common patient complaint is discomfort on the imaging table. The design of this MRI table addresses this complaint by incorporating the comfort of a Tempur-Pedic mattress. In addition, the design permits performing all MRI exams feet first, which further reduces claustrophobia. The system has an extra wide bore which allows for even greater comfort. So how do we do? Now they went from this to heat and massage chairs with no medical stuff in sight, to an inpatient area designed around safety when it's needed most, to including loved ones in every step of the way. They were able to meet every attribute and continue to provide an experience instead of an exam. Anthropologist Margaret Mead said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." What would your day look like if every patient left a positive impression on your soul, and in return, you did the same? While not every clinic or hospital, etc., has the capital budget for a new building, that doesn't mean you can't provide an exceptional experience for your patients. After all, it doesn't take revenue to take a moment to establish a warm relationship, or use the power of imagination to develop connection, or to try and end every encounter or conversation with a win-win. In other words, both sides see and understand the other side's perspective. I have found that it is more how you say it than what you say. You can create a warm connection by communicating heart to heart, allowing the patient to invest, to buy in to what they're about to experience, provide the patient an opportunity to present a different approach, take the time to show them that they matter to you, listen to them, and find common ground. Imagine this flower represents your life, and each petal is something you are grateful for, something that makes your life rewarding, meaningful, and fun. Things like friends and loved ones, pets, your health, your job, your home, volunteering, recreation like gardening, reading a good book, eating and drinking, traveling, shopping, your faith. Now what happens to these beautiful petals as we get old? Well, our friends and loved ones, they die. We lose our pets. We lose our health. We lose our job. We lose our homes. We lose our ability to volunteer. We're unable to do the recreation we used to enjoy. Traveling becomes limited. Shopping becomes a chore and no longer fun. This is what's happening in the lives of our patients. Their lives were once in full bloom. They had lovely things in their lives too. Think of all the losses they have suffered. Think of all the grief they have had to bear in giving up their petals one by one. Some all at once, such as when they have a stroke. When my life looks like this sad flower, I wonder what kind of person I will be. What kind of person will you be? Win-win conversations. What each of us believes to be true simply reflects our views about reality. Furthermore, it is our beliefs about what we can say and how we can say it that get in the way of our conversations. Therefore, if we can change our beliefs, productive conversations can occur. To that end, we need to take the time to discover our patient's reality. One easy way to do this after we have taken the time to introduce ourselves is to 1. Propose a course of action, then check for understanding, and finally check for an agreement. Remember that the goal is to understand them. This is not an opportunity to push our agenda on them. It cannot be one-sided. So far in this section, we have talked about how our imagination can help us connect and empathize with our patients, as well as how our beliefs affect our reality and its impact on how productive our conversations can be. Drilling further into the idea of how our reality impacts our conversations, I would like to talk about motivation. Specifically, I want you to reflect on what your motivation is behind every conversation, especially the difficult ones. What I mean is what the goal or the objective you're trying to achieve is by having the conversation. Here's a non-medical example of how motivation can impact the results of a conversation. Let's say that your significant other has spent the last dollars in your checking account again. You're upset and you have decided that it's time that the two of you sit down and discuss this now. If your motivation is to get them to stop spending money or to only spend it your way, what will happen? What will the outcome of that conversation be? From my own experience, the ending was never the way I wanted or planned. By the way, there were 14.5 million hits when you enter couples discussing finances on Google. Now, what would happen if the only objective you both had going into the conversation was to completely understand the perspective of the other person? How would the outcome be different if there were more questions than statements? And if your motivation was only to learn and appreciate why they spent the money, and for them it is to learn and appreciate how it impacted you. But it's not easy. However, this conversation will leave the both of you better than when you started. One of my favorite authors, Susan Scott, wrote in her book, Fierce Conversations, "You may think I see you as you are, but in reality, I see you as I am. The implications of this are staggering, and not in the least of them is this. The issues in my life are rarely about you. They are almost always about me." I first read this line right before I left work one day. While driving home, I found myself getting angry at the drivers waiting until the last minute to merge. As each one passed me, I could feel my blood begin to boil. Finally, the merging was over, and we resumed our trip home. Then, as my exit approached, I merged as I do almost every time. At the last minute! It was when I saw my bad behavior or choices acted out in someone else that I was really bothered. At that moment, this line came back to me. When you get angry or lose your cool towards another individual for some infraction, how often are you guilty of the same offense? Apply this at work. Do you lose patience with your patients when you feel that the reason they are there is because of their own bad decisions? What would Disney do if they ran a hospital? Well, why Disney? Because they're experts at experience. Let's start by looking at how Disney defines quality service and why that is not sufficient for them. Then we will see that at Disney's very core is the experience. Disney employees don't provide a service, they provide an experience. They value courtesy over efficiency, and this has spread to other organizations, which I'll share some examples of towards the end of the talk. So Disney defines quality service in two parts: quality, which is a high degree of excellence, and service, which is meeting needs. It sounds good, but is it enough? A customer's expectation of quality service continues to increase every year. Price, quality, and special features, while important for initial interaction, are not enough to ensure repeat business. People don't just buy things, they buy expectations about performance and service. This can be seen every time a new iPhone is launched. Disney realizes that doing a great job at meeting needs, while good, is not enough to create a lifelong customer. Instead, they focus on 4 critical aspects of their customers: their needs, their wants, their stereotypes, and their emotions. Needs: you have basic needs like food, water, and shelter. And you have situational needs requiring a product or service to solve, like shade on a hot day. You have wants. Wants are met by existing products or service. Wants can be defined as exceeding customer expectations. Stereotypes. This is the image that our customer or patients have of us. Better said, it's what they're expecting us to do to them, or who we have convinced them we are by our actions. Then there are their emotions. These are less tangible than the other 3. However, it is a good measure of our success with the other 3. In summary, our patients have a situational need for treatment or diagnosis and want us to provide them with an answer to help them feel better. Their perception or stereotype of us is that we are too busy, and they could be feeling scared, confused, and overwhelmed. By taking a moment to notice these points will empower us to change our actions and exceed their expectations. Let's take a look at a few examples. So patient A needs a chest x-ray. They want to know why it hurts so bad to breathe. Their stereotype of us is that to them, or to us, they are just a number. And their emotions, they're feeling scared and exposed. This patient will not be in a frame of mind to open up and share. We need to take a moment to reassure this patient that we are on the same team with the same desires for them. How can we do this? Well, by finding something we have in common so we are not seen as robots, and convey that we too care about their results. Let's look at patient B. This patient needs a tib-fib x-ray. They want to know how bad it's broken and is maybe their sports career over. Their stereotype of us is that we have no idea nor care how much this is going to hurt them. And their emotions right now, they're kind of nervous and chatty. This patient is in a completely different space than the first patient. This patient will most likely share anything in an effort to distract them from facing what's coming. We need to take a moment to connect, to discover what they are most concerned about. Then we need to allow them to take an active role in the exam to avoid placing them in any unneeded pain. The 7 Habits guru Stephen R. Covey states that we judge ourselves by our intentions and others by their behaviors. My challenge to you is, how often are your intentions aligned with your behavior? If you were able to list the priorities of your hospital, clinic, etc., based solely on the actions of the leadership, what words would you use? Does it match the mission statement? An example given recently was a site that decided not to carry service contracts for their equipment. I'm not saying that this is wrong, but what does that say their priority is? Safety is the most important part of Disney's work, and that of every hospital, clinic, doc in a box, etc., and it should be. However, this is not what brings people back to Disney World. No one says, I am going to Disney because it's so safe. These priorities are placed in order of importance at Disney. They are not equal pillars on which to build. When faced with a decision between 2 of the priorities, they always pick the higher priority. Now, what would you say your priorities are at work when asked to choose between courtesy and efficiency? At my hospital, we are trying to instill courtesy as a core value. It is expected that if you see someone in the hallway looking lost, to take them to their destination, not just point the way. If they are headed to the cafeteria, You can go with them and carry their tray and help them to their seats. Anything to help them feel truly appreciated and valued. St. Francis of Assisi wrote, "Grant that we may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand." When the pressure is on and your back is against the wall, which is your default view? A window or a mirror? In other words, when it matters the most, do you place the needs of others before your own? Do you see the world or just yourself? To improve results on patient satisfaction surveys, some hospitals have adopted the term service excellence. Service excellence is the term used to describe the ability of the provider to consistently meet and manage patient expectations. This is delivering the promise of quality healthcare, providing a personal touch, doing a more than adequate job, and resolving problems well. While these are all good intentions, quite often it can lead to kind of a teaching the test phenomenon, where healthcare workers are instructed to robotically follow acronyms that at times removes the person from the patient. There'll be more on this later. Now everyone expects Disney to consider its work as theater. They are in the business of creating an escape from reality, after all. Disney is an experience, as are movies and plays. And so are hospitals. While Disney provides a stage to facilitate the experience of fun, hospitals provide a stage to facilitate the transformational experience of healing. So what value is in the experience? Well, in the experience economy, Arthur B. Joseph Pine II and James Gilmore described 4 levels of economic offerings. These are commodities, then goods, then services, and finally experiences. With each offering, value and profits increase exponentially. So there is an economic reason now to focus on the experience of the patient as opposed to providing a great service. Let's look at this using coffee as an example. Coffee as a commodity is valued at $1.28 per pound. According to the Specialty Coffee Association of America, a single pound of coffee is enough for 48 6-ounce cups of coffee, or 2.6 cents per cup. Packaged for the store as goods, and it jumps to $12.80 per pound, or 27 cents a cup. Sell it as a service in a coffee shop, and it can jump again, this time to $1.59 per cup. However, if you sell it as part of an experience where personal connection occurs, your needs and the needs of others are understood and valued, surrounded by an environment with the perfect atmosphere, and the price ranges from $3 to $7. And the experience is even richer when the barista remembers your name and your drink. So while commodities are fungible or interchangeable, goods can be tangible, services are intangible, however, experiences are memorable. The authors continue by stating that the first 3 economic offerings remain at arm's length. They're outside the buyer, while experiences are inherently personal. They actually occur within any individual who has been engaged on an emotional, physical, intellectual, or even spiritual level. Applied to healthcare, hospitals are providing experiences that engage patients on an emotional, physical, and intellectual, and even spiritual level, whether patients frame it in their minds or not. Patients don't talk about the service they received, they talk about their experiences, good or bad. So, what else can we do to change our service into an experience like that of Starbucks or Disney? We need to realize that we are always communicating, whether verbally or non-verbally, and whether it's intentional or not. Just as if we were on stage, if we can learn to control or direct our communication, verbal and nonverbal, towards the goal of engaging all of the patient's senses in an experience in which performing members of the cast or all the members of the medical team conveys the desired outcome of their visits. Like a script, desired outcomes or their experiences determine what events need to take place in what setting, and with what people. This is not the same as service excellence or other programs designed to teach the perfect phrase with the expectation to memorize and repeat the phrases word for word. Just like that, our instructions can seem just as robotic. Let's listen in.
Hello. I am Bob. I am here to take your X-ray. Hold still and I will be done in a few minutes.
Bob, while a great tech since he can get an X-ray out of a 35mm camera, using canned verbiage can come across as very robotic and uncaring. Instead, we should focus on key points of the conversation, allowing the words and actions to be our own, thereby creating a genuine experience. In addition to showing the patient that we care, allowing Bob the opportunity and tools to connect will improve his engagement, not increase his repetition and boredom. There are key elements to creating engagement with a patient. These are greeting the patient by name and introducing yourself, comment on anything special in the room like flowers or pictures of families, meet any other people in the room, then explain the test and what they can expect to see, feel, and experience. Ask if there's anything else they need or need explained. Empathize with any expressions of feeling during the test. Then, when leaving, ask how they want the door left open, closed, or partially open. Then try to remember the conversations to build on them the next time you see them. Remember that you are staging an experience, not delivering a service. Like the theater, the show must go on. Regardless of how we feel day in and day out, providing a positive experience requires the same level of performance as we would give on our best days. It is our patients who are not feeling well, and they are looking to us for positive encouragement. When you are feeling your worst and you seek help, who would you want to see? Someone who is completely open, upbeat, and cheerful? Or someone who is pessimistic, gloomy, depressed, and may be unable to experience pleasure in life? In addition, talent matters as much as skill. It is important that we know how to operate our machines in a safe manner, how to use our wrists, packs, etc. efficiently. However, of equal, and in some cases more important, is talent. As a hiring manager, I ask myself two questions during an interview. Is the person smart? And is the person happy? If they are smart, I can teach them every aspect of the job. If they are happy, then I know they will always make our patients happy. Experience and skill always come second to talent. Now, acting is not pretending. In his book, No Acting Please, A Revolutionary Approach to Acting and Living, acting coach and author Eric Morris wrote, "Acting is the art of creating genuine realities on stage. No matter what the material, the actor's fundamental question is, what is the reality and how can I make it real to me?" In this kind of training, the actor discovers himself fully both on and off the stage. Acting is not pretending to feel one way or another. It is allowing yourself to be open to another's emotions and making them real to you. The key techniques actors use to be able to feel on cue is called sensory memory. More than just recalling a sad memory, recalling what you were seeing, smelling, tasting, touching will allow you to fully recall your feelings at that time. Take time to recall times of extreme joy, sadness, anger, frustration, etc., and concentrate on what you were sensing at that time. Then, when you are interacting with your patients and they are expressing a feeling, recall your senses when you felt the same way, and this will allow you to have a real connection with another individual on a very deep level. Let's do some practice. Close your eyes and think back to a time when you were cold, very cold. Focus on recalling what you were seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, and what things felt like. By focusing on a real past, you can recall that the cold affects the tip of your nose and the edges of your ears first. You know that your lips get numb quickly and your fingers get stiff and hard to move. You know that if you place your hands under your armpit, it will warm them up. You can feel your toes numbing. You warm your hands under your armpits and place them momentarily over your ears and then back under your arms. By doing the sensory exploration of how cold affects you, you have created your own unique response to the cold. No one else can imitate you. It's your reality, and we, the spectator, believe you. And if you can focus deeply enough, you may find emotional responses occurring that you may not have anticipated. Euripides was a tragedian in ancient Greece. He wrote that when a good man is hurt, all who would be good must suffer with him. This is ultimately our calling. However, how often do we look upon the suffering of a stranger with disinterest or sweep it away with a quick joke? It's time to put it all together. So far in this section, we have discussed the importance of showing that we care, tips to understanding what is important to our patients, why we should value courtesy over efficiency, and that providing an experience and not just a service is key to connection. Let's look at a story that puts these concepts together. It's called The Extended Stay at the Ritz-Carlton. The story begins when customer Chris Hearn's son left his favorite stuffed giraffe, Joshy, in their hotel room after a recent stay. Mr. Hearn assured his distraught son that Joshy was just staying a few extra days on vacation. He then called the staff at the Ritz and relayed the story he had told his son. In an all-star effort to make everything right for their customer, the staff at the Ritz created a series of photographs that included all of the activities Joshy had been involved in during his extended stay vacation. First things first, they knew Joshy just couldn't be aimlessly wandering around the Ritz without a staff card, so they made him one. After that, Joshy headed over to the pool area to relax. Not one to sit around and do nothing, Joshy helped out in the loss prevention department. Joshy then decided to melt away some stress with the spa day. To top it off, the Ritz sent Hearn and his son a booklet filled with information about Joshy's stay, as well as a host of pictures showing what a good time he had. What a story. What an experience. Well, let's take a look at a medical practice focusing on the experience of the patient. Patients walking in the front door of the University of Minnesota Health Clinics and Surgery Center in Minneapolis may do a double take, thinking instead they've entered an Apple store. Registration desks have been replaced by greeters armed with iPads. Patients are tagged electronically so providers can find them anywhere in the waiting areas, on lounge chairs, near windows, at counters with stools, or on conventional chairs and couches without calling their names. And when possible, patients' lab tests are scheduled before their visits, making the actual visits more efficient. The focus is on consumerism, and a more patient-centric environment is paying off. Since opening in 2016, new patient growth is up 14%. The space allows providers to see twice as many patients as they could before when they were spread out in various locations around the campus, and the clinic has no individual physician offices. Instead, physicians share desks in an open space that encourage collaboration. And if they can't find a fellow provider in their space, they can find them on a screen, much as a provider would find a patient in the waiting area. The clinic is open from morning to night every weekday, from morning to evening on weekends, which is up from the 8 hours it previously operated each weekday. Patients seem to be happy with the changes. The clinic gets 3 times more compliments than complaints. Small changes can make a large impact. This mural greets patients as they arrive at Pennsylvania's Meadville Medical Center Medical Arts Building. It is a 9-foot-high, 40-foot-long brick wall that was forever featureless and dark. Now bright blue with trees and flowers and birds, designed to help people be calmer as they're accessing their health care. The mural helps create a sense of calmness for everyone coming in, and they have found that patients have far less fear and are more able to listen and be engaged in their health care. Here are 3 big questions for your teams. 1. What makes your group, department, or family unique? 2. What is your top priority right now, the top priority of your group, department, or family? Then 3. How do you talk about that top priority? How often is it discussed? How do you use the answers to these questions to then guide your decisions? Emotions are not accurately conveyed in electronic medium. Is this guy angry, focused, or just constipated? You get my point. Mystery author Agatha Christie said, "Good advice is always certain to be ignored, but that is no reason not to give it." Which is one of the reasons I gave this talk. In closing, I would like to leave you with this. It is my hope that you have been inspired to connect with your patients and that you will take with you some of the tips I presented today. In addition to that hope, I am also aware of my blind spots, and I could use your help. As this is only a collection of my thoughts, passions, and experiences, I would like to know this. What is the one thing you would add to this that would make our patients' experience even better? Here are some good reads and websites that my material was taken from. Great books. If Disney Ran Your Hospital, 9.5 Things You Would Do Differently, Fierce Conversations, The 3 Big Questions for a Frantic Family, and more additional websites. Thank you.